What would you do if you received a heartbreaking message from a desperate mother begging for help to feed her starving baby? Tyler Harrison, a successful entrepreneur from Manhattan, never imagined that a simple wrong number would change his life forever. One early morning, while checking his work messages, a desperate plea appeared on his phone that touched the deepest corners of his soul. Subscribe to the channel to discover how a misdirected message became the truest love story. In the illuminated streets of Manhattan's Upper East Side, Tyler Harrison walked through the shadows of early morning, returning from a business meeting that had stretched into the late hours. At 35, he had built a business empire that many envied, but few knew the secret he kept in his heart. Every week, without anyone knowing, he visited humble neighborhoods carrying groceries, medicine, and hope to families struggling to survive. His driver waited outside the last building where he had left money for an elderly woman's medical expenses. "Mr. Harrison, it's very late," the older man murmured. But Tyler only smiled with that tranquility that comes from doing good without expecting recognition. The city lights blurred as his Mercedes glided across the wet asphalt, but his mind was already planning the next family he could help discreetly. The penthouse where he lived reflected his financial success, but also his emotional loneliness. Enormous windows displayed the sleeping city while he poured himself coffee that no longer tasted like anything. The walls were decorated with business awards and photographs from social events where he smiled out of obligation, but no family pictures adorned his home. His mother had passed away 2 years ago, and since then the feeling of emptiness had become more intense. "What good is all this money if I have no one to share it with?" he asked himself every night before sleeping. He'd had relationships, but they all ended when women showed more interest in his bank account than in knowing his soul. The silence of his apartment wrapped around him like a cold blanket, reminding him that material success didn't fill the spaces of the heart. His employees described him as a fair and generous boss, always willing to help when someone faced personal problems. The previous week, he had paid for his secretary's son's operation without thinking twice, and before that, he had provided scholarships to 3 college students whose parents worked at one of his companies. Tyler firmly believed that God had blessed him with abundance so he could be an instrument of blessing for others. "Money is just a tool," he used to say. "What matters is how we use it to touch lives." He performed his charitable actions in secret without photographs for social media or press releases that would feed his ego. For him, true generosity didn't need applause or public recognition. It simply arose from the genuine desire to alleviate others' suffering and plant hope where there was despair. That October night, while reviewing his last work emails before sleeping, his phone vibrated with a text message from an unknown number. At first he thought it was advertising or some bank promotion, but something in the desperate tone of the message made him stop. The words seemed to come from a broken soul, from someone who had exhausted all options before writing those lines. It wasn't a message specifically directed at him, but the anguish it transmitted was so real and palpable that his heart began to beat faster. Tyler read the message once, twice, 3 times, trying to understand how it had reached his hands. Destiny, coincidence, or perhaps God's hand had put in his path an opportunity to change a life, but also, without knowing it yet, the opportunity to change his own forever. That unexpected message was about to reveal to him that sometimes the most beautiful mistakes are those that guide us toward our true purpose. In a modest apartment in Brooklyn, Evie Martinez rocked her 6-month-old baby in her arms while tears rolled down her cheeks without her being able to contain them. Little Leo cried from hunger, and she knew only 2 bottles of formula remained in the kitchen. At 24, she had learned that life could be cruel, even to those who least deserved it. Leo's father had disappeared when he learned about the pregnancy, leaving her alone to face a reality she never imagined living. Her job as a cashier at a grocery store barely covered rent for the small room where they lived, and every dollar had to stretch to cover diapers, medicine, and food. However, despite the difficulties, Evie hadn't lost that special light in her brown eyes that spoke of unshakable hope. Every morning she thanked God for allowing her to wake up next to her son, and every night she asked for strength to be the mother Leo deserved. The nights were the hardest, when the day's exhaustion mixed with tomorrow's worries. Leo was a beautiful baby with big, curious eyes, but lately he had been more restless because the formula she could afford to buy wasn't the best quality. Evie had noticed that the little one wasn't gaining weight as he should, and the pediatrician at the health center had recommended a specialized formula that cost twice the normal price. "Your baby needs better nutrition," the doctor had said with a compassionate smile that couldn't hide his concern. That night, while calculating and recalculating her expenses in a worn notebook, she realized she wouldn't be able to afford the recommended formula until the next paycheck. Desperation began to take hold of her chest, but she took a deep breath and reminded herself that she had faced more difficult moments. She was a strong woman, raised by a grandmother who taught her that obstacles are overcome with faith and determination. Her pride prevented her from asking for help, even from the few relatives she had left. She had grown up watching her grandmother work hard to support the family, never extending her hand to beg for charity or favors. "Dignity is not for sale, my child," the old woman always said, "and poverty is no reason for shame if you work honestly." Evie had inherited that philosophy of life, but she had also learned that being a mother radically changes priorities. It was no longer just about her pride or dignity, but about Leo's health and well-being. That night, while the baby finally fell asleep in her arms, Evie contemplated his angelic face and felt her soul breaking. She couldn't allow her son to suffer because of her stubbornness about not accepting help. A mother's love was stronger than any barrier her pride could raise. She had to find a way to get that formula, no matter what it cost her dignity. In a moment of absolute desperation, she remembered that a co-worker had given her the phone number of a woman who supposedly helped single mothers in difficult situations. Evie had never seriously considered that option, but that early morning, with Leo sleeping restlessly from hunger, she decided it was time to swallow her pride. With trembling hands, she searched for the crumpled piece of paper where she had written the number weeks ago. The darkness of the room seemed to amplify her fears and doubts, but the image of her son becoming malnourished gave her the courage she needed. She began to write a message, choosing each word carefully to not sound too desperate, although inside she felt exactly that. Her heart beat so hard she could hear it in the silence of the early morning. She didn't know if that woman really existed or if the number was still active, but she had to try. What she didn't know was that she was about to make the most beautiful mistake of her life. After several attempts to draft the perfect message, Evie finally wrote from the heart, without embellishments or lies, just the raw truth of a mother who needed help to feed her baby. Her fingers trembled as she pressed send, and she immediately felt a mixture of relief and anxiety that kept her awake the rest of the night. She had no idea that in her nervousness she had misdialed one of the digits, sending her desperate plea to a complete stranger. The message had flown through the invisible waves of technology, crossing the city to reach the hands of someone she had never imagined. Leo moved restlessly in her arms, as if sensing that something important had just happened in their lives. Evie cradled him gently, whispering words of love in his ear, promising him she would find a way to give him everything he needed. The early morning advanced slowly, but she couldn't sleep, wondering if she had done the right thing by sending that message, not knowing she had set in motion a chain of events that would change her destiny forever. The mistake that embarrassed her so much was about to become the miracle she had been praying for. Tyler read the message once more, and each word pierced his heart like a thorn. "Sorry to bother you, but I'm desperate. My 6-month-old baby needs special formula, and I don't have money to buy it. I'm only asking you to help me with $50 so my son doesn't go hungry. I know you don't know me, but I'm a working mother who never asks anyone for anything. I'm begging you, please." The message was full of spelling errors and punctuation mistakes that betrayed the humble education of whoever had written it, but it also transmitted a sincerity so pure that it made a lump form in his throat. It wasn't the typical scammer message that circulated on social media. There was something in those words that spoke of real pain, of a mother facing the most terrible fear she could experience, seeing her child suffer from hunger. Tyler got up from his leather chair and walked to the window, observing the lights of the city that never slept. Somewhere in that urban immensity, a woman had sent a cry for help that had reached him by mistake. Destiny is capricious, he thought. But perhaps that message hadn't reached his hands by chance. The image of a baby crying from hunger installed itself in his mind like a photograph he couldn't erase. Tyler had grown up in a middle-class family where there was never a lack of food on the table, and although he had seen poverty in his charitable visits, he had never been so close to a desperate mother's pain. His own mother had passed away when he was already a successful adult, but he vividly remembered the stories she told him about the sacrifices she had made to raise him when his father abandoned them. "A child is the most sacred thing a woman can have," she always said, "and a mother is capable of anything to see him happy." Those words resonated in his memory as he reread the message, imagining that unknown woman fighting against her pride to write those lines. It didn't matter that the message wasn't for him. It had reached his hands, and that was enough. God had mysterious ways of putting opportunities to do good in people's paths, and this would be no exception. Without thinking twice, Tyler dialed the number from which he had received the message, but after several rings, voicemail activated. The recording was simple. "I can't answer right now. Please leave your message." It was a female voice, young, tired, but sweet, confirming his suspicions that this was a real woman in a desperate situation. He decided not to leave a message yet. First, he wanted to investigate a little more to make sure it wasn't a scam, although his heart already told him that plea was genuine. Using his contacts at the telecommunications company where he had investments, he managed to trace the approximate location of the number: Brooklyn, a working-class area. It was a neighborhood he knew well because that's where his driver had grown up, an honest man who had worked with him for years. The information confirmed that the message came from an area where families indeed struggled day by day to get ahead, not from some residential neighborhood where sophisticated scammers might be operating. The early morning advanced, but Tyler couldn't sleep. He imagined that mother watching over her hungry baby, probably counting the dollars she had left and praying to find a solution. The desperation of not being able to feed a child must be the most terrible pain a human being could experience, he thought as he paced back and forth in his spacious apartment. He decided he couldn't wait until dawn to act. Every minute that passed was another minute of suffering for that family. He dressed quickly and went down to the parking garage where he kept his cars. The Mercedes seemed too ostentatious for the mission he had in mind, so he chose his simpler truck, a pickup he used when visiting his construction project sites. Before leaving, he stopped at a 24-hour pharmacy and bought several containers of the most expensive and nutritious formula he could find, plus diapers, baby wipes, and some basic baby medicines. The cashier looked at him strangely for the quantity of baby products he was buying at that hour, but Tyler only smiled and paid without explanation. The trip to Brooklyn took him 40 minutes in New York's night traffic. While driving, he mentally practiced what he would say to that woman when he found her. He didn't want to scare her by showing up suddenly at her door, but he also couldn't sit idle, knowing a baby might be suffering. He decided he would be honest from the beginning. He would explain that he had received her message by mistake, but that didn't matter because he wanted to help. Upon arriving in the area, he realized he would need more information to locate the exact address. He used his contacts once more and managed to obtain the address associated with the phone number. It was a narrow street, full of small houses and divided apartments where working families performed miracles to make ends meet. Tyler parked his truck a few blocks away and walked the rest of the way carrying a bag with the products he had bought. Dawn was beginning to paint the sky with orange and pink colors, and he knew he was about to knock on the door of someone whose life would change forever. What he didn't know was that his own was also about to transform in a way he never would have imagined. Evie woke up startled by Leo's desperate crying, who had spent a restless night from the hunger tormenting him. Her eyes were swollen from crying so much the night before, and seeing the empty bottle on the nightstand, she felt her heart shrink with pain. Only one can of formula remained, the cheapest she had been able to get, but she knew it wouldn't be enough to satisfy her son's appetite throughout the day. She got up from the bed with slow movements, carrying the little one against her chest while whispering words of comfort that sounded empty even to herself. The room smelled of dampness and the worry that had installed itself as a permanent guest in her home. Through the window came the golden light of dawn, but for Evie the day began with the same anguish as always. She checked her phone looking for any response to the message she had sent hours ago, but there were no new notifications. Her heart sank a little more, although part of her felt relieved not to have received a negative response. While preparing the last bottle she had available, she heard soft knocks on the door that made her stop all her movements. Leo kept crying in her arms, but she held her breath trying to identify who could be visiting her so early. The knocks repeated, this time accompanied by a male voice speaking with respect and delicacy. "Good morning, miss. Sorry to bother you so early, but I received your message last night and came to help you." Evie felt the world stop around her. Her message. Someone had responded and had even taken the trouble to come to her house. Her legs trembled as she slowly approached the door, not knowing whether to feel hope or fear. Leo seemed to have perceived the tension in the air because his cries became more intense, as if he knew something important was about to happen. With one hand holding her baby and the other on the door latch, Evie took a deep breath before asking with a trembling voice, "Who are you?" "My name is Tyler," the voice on the other side of the door responded. "Last night I received your message asking for help for your baby. I know this may sound strange, but I brought specialized formula and some other things you might need." Evie slowly opened the door, keeping the security chain on, and peeked out just enough to see a tall man with brown hair and green eyes that radiated genuine warmth. He wore a simple white shirt and jeans, nothing ostentatious, but there was something in his presence that transmitted solidity and confidence. In his hands, he carried several pharmacy bags that seemed to be full of products. Evie felt a mixture of relief and distrust that paralyzed her for a few seconds. "How did you get my address?" she asked, with her voice broken by emotion. Tyler smiled with that smile that had consoled dozens of families in his charitable visits and responded, "I have some contacts who helped me locate you. I know this is very unusual, but when I read your message, I couldn't rest easy knowing your baby needed help." The sincerity in his words was so evident that Evie felt tears beginning to roll down her cheeks without being able to control them. With trembling hands, Evie removed the security chain and fully opened the door, allowing Tyler to see the humility of her home, but also the dignity with which she kept every corner clean and orderly. Despite the limitations, Leo cried with more force, and Tyler felt his soul breaking seeing that small, fragile, and needy being. "Please come in," Evie murmured, stepping aside to let him enter. "Your baby is hungry," Tyler observed with a mixture of concern and tenderness that Evie had never seen in a stranger's eyes. "Yes," she responded with a choked voice. "The formula ran out last night and I don't have money until next week." Tyler said nothing more. He simply began to take out of the bag several containers of premium formula, top-quality diapers, baby wipes, and even some soft baby toys. Evie watched each item appear as if witnessing a miracle, feeling her legs tremble so much she had to sit in the only chair she had in the room. "Why are you doing this?" Evie asked, while Tyler prepared a bottle with movements that betrayed experience with babies, perhaps from a nephew or friend's children. "Because when someone asks for help to feed their child, there's no question worth asking," he responded without looking up from what he was doing. "And because I believe that sometimes messages reach the right people, even if by mistake." Hearing those words, Evie understood she had dialed the number wrong, but instead of feeling embarrassed, she felt a strange sensation that everything had happened exactly as it should. Tyler finished preparing the bottle, tested it on his wrist to verify the temperature, and extended it to Evie with a smile that seemed to illuminate the entire room. Leo calmed immediately upon smelling the formula, and when Evie began to feed him, the silence that settled in the room was full of gratitude, hope, and something else that neither of them dared yet to name. Tyler watched the scene with a strange sensation of fullness he had never experienced, as if he had found the place where his heart had always wanted to be. In that moment, both understood that the wrong number had actually been the most beautiful mistake of their lives. While Leo eagerly drank the specialized formula, Evie couldn't stop observing Tyler with a mixture of gratitude and curiosity that kept her silent. There was something in the elegant way he moved, in the quality of his clothing, apparently simple but clearly expensive, and in the ease with which he had bought all those products without blinking, that told her this man was not an ordinary person. His hands were soft, without calluses from manual work, and his way of speaking denoted university education and elevated social position. "What do you do?" she asked timidly, almost fearing the answer. Tyler hesitated a moment before responding simply, "I have some construction companies." The humility in his response didn't manage to hide the truth Evie was beginning to intuit. This man who had appeared like an angel at her door was someone very powerful economically. The weight of that realization fell on her shoulders like a concrete slab, filling her with a shame she hadn't felt even in her worst moments of need. The social difference between them became evident in ways that cut like knives into Evie's proud heart. Tyler had paid for that premium formula what she earned in 3 days of work, and he had done it without thinking twice, like someone buying gum at the corner store. His watch, though discreet, was clearly from an exclusive brand she had seen in shop windows when she worked cleaning offices before getting pregnant. "You probably think I'm a freeloader or a user," she tormented herself internally, feeling her cheeks burn with humiliation. The gratitude she felt for his help mixed with a sharp pain in her chest as she realized how vulnerable she had been exposed before this stranger. For the first time since sending that message, she deeply regretted having done so, even though it meant Leo would have continued going hungry. Tyler noticed the change in Evie's attitude, how her body had become rigid, and how she avoided looking him directly in the eyes. He had seen that reaction before in other people he helped, that mixture of gratitude and shame they experienced when realizing the magnitude of the economic difference between them. "Please, don't feel uncomfortable," he said with the softest voice he could find. "Everyone goes through difficult moments in life." But his words, though well-intentioned, sounded empty to Evie, who knew a man like him probably hadn't known a single day of true economic need in his entire life. "You don't understand," she murmured, pressing Leo against her chest as if he were a protective shield. "I'm not one of those women who go around asking rich men for money. I work honestly and had never asked anyone for help." The desperation in her voice was so evident that Tyler felt like approaching and comforting her, but he sensed any wrong move could make her close up completely and throw him out of her house. The tension in the small room became so dense, it seemed to make breathing difficult. Evie stood up from the chair abruptly, almost dropping the bottle, and walked to the window with her back to Tyler. "I'm going to pay you back for everything," she declared with a firmness that contrasted with the tears rolling down her cheeks. "It may take me time, but I'm going to return every dollar you spent." Tyler stood up slowly, searching for the right words not to hurt her already wounded pride further. "I don't want you to pay me back anything," he responded with absolute sincerity. "And I'm not here because I think you're a user. I'm here because I received a desperate mother's message and I couldn't rest easy knowing her son was hungry." His words touched a sensitive fiber in Evie's heart, who turned to look at him with eyes bright with contained tears. In that moment, Leo began making satisfied noises after having drunk the entire bottle, and both adults couldn't help but smile at the baby's innocence, who knew nothing of wounded pride or social differences. "I can't accept more help from you," Evie declared with a determination that came from the deepest part of her being. "You've already done too much, and I have no way to repay you." Tyler felt a pang of pain hearing those words, not from the economic rejection, but because he sensed that behind that refusal, there was something deeper. The fear of a woman hurt by life to trust in the selfless kindness of a stranger. "What if it wasn't help?" he asked with a softness that completely disarmed her. What if it was simply an act of humanity between two people who have crossed paths? Evie looked at him intently, trying to decipher if there was any hidden second intention behind those beautiful words. His green eyes radiated a sincerity that was difficult to fake, but her experience with men had taught her to distrust promises that sounded too good to be true. Leo had fallen asleep in her arms with an expression of peace he hadn't had in days, and that image filled her with such deep gratitude that she felt her voice breaking when speaking. "I don't know what to think," she finally admitted. "Nothing like this has ever happened to me." Tyler smiled with a tenderness that reached the most hurt corners of Evie's heart. And in that moment, she knew she was facing something that could change her life. The days following that unexpected encounter became an emotional roller coaster for Evie, who couldn't stop thinking about Tyler and the way he had appeared in her life like a miracle disguised as an error. Every time she fed Leo with the formula he had brought, she felt a contradictory mixture of gratitude and unease that kept her awake at night. Why would a rich and successful man take the trouble to help a complete stranger without asking for anything in return? Her life experience told her that nobody gave something for nothing, especially men with money. But there was something in Tyler's eyes that defied all her previous beliefs. During those days, he hadn't tried to contact her again, respecting the space she had asked for. But Evie found herself constantly checking her phone, waiting for a message that never came. The absence of any kind of pressure from him only increased the confusion she felt because it contradicted all the patterns of male behavior she knew. The fourth day after their encounter, while returning from work carrying Leo in his used stroller, Evie found a brown paper bag discreetly placed next to her door. Her heart began to beat faster because she intuited who it could be from, but at the same time she felt a mixture of annoyance and tenderness she didn't know how to process. Inside the bag was more formula, diapers in the size Leo was using, and a note written in clear masculine handwriting that said, "For Leo, from someone who believes all babies deserve to be well fed. There's no need for you to respond or feel obligated. I just wanted to make sure the little one is okay." Evie read the note several times, looking between the lines for some hidden intention, but only found genuine concern for her son's well-being. That night, after putting Leo to bed, she spent a long time looking at those products that represented more than she could spend in a month, wondering what kind of man would do something like this without expecting absolutely anything in return. Don't forget to like this video if you're enjoying this incredible story. Over the following weeks, Tyler's visits to the park where Evie took Leo became a routine neither had planned, but developed as naturally as each day's sunrise. At first, she remained tense and alert, waiting for him to make some move that would confirm her suspicions about rich men's true intentions. But as days passed, that tension transformed into an almost anxious expectation to see him arrive. Tyler had a special way of talking to Leo, using that sweet voice adults reserve for babies, and the little one responded with smiles and coos that melted his mother's heart. It was evident Leo had developed genuine affection for that man who treated him with the tenderness of a loving uncle. For Evie, seeing that natural connection between her son and Tyler awakened contradictory feelings she didn't know how to interpret or handle. During those afternoon conversations in the park, Evie discovered facets of Tyler that didn't correspond at all to the image she had of wealthy men. He told her anecdotes from his childhood in a middle-class family, how his mother had raised him alone after his father abandoned them, and the sacrifices he had made to build his company from scratch. "My mom taught me that money is just a tool," he confided one afternoon while Leo slept peacefully in his stroller. "And that what matters is how you use that tool to touch other people's lives." Evie listened to those stories with attention that surprised even herself, discovering that behind the successful businessman was a man with wounds similar to hers, someone who had also known paternal absence and nights of economic worry. The vulnerability Tyler showed when talking about his past contrasted completely with the imposing image he projected in the magazine photographs she had seen online. One day, Leo developed a high fever that kept Evie awake all night, applying cold compresses and monitoring his temperature with the digital thermometer Tyler had discreetly given her the previous week. At dawn, When the fever didn't subside and the little one cried inconsolably, Evie found herself dialing Tyler's number without even thinking about it, as if it were the most natural thing in the world to turn to him in moments of crisis. "Leo is very sick," she said with a broken voice when he answered on the second ring. "I don't know what to do." Without asking unnecessary questions or reproaches for waking him so early, Tyler responded, "I'm on my way, and I'll call my pediatrician to see us immediately." 25 minutes later, he was at Evie's door with his truck running, ready to take them to the most exclusive medical office in Lower Manhattan. During the trip, while Evie held Leo against her chest, Tyler drove with a serenity that calmed her more than any words of comfort. In that moment, she understood she had begun to trust him in a way she never thought possible. The consultation revealed it was just a common viral infection, but the specialist's care was unlike anything Evie had experienced. When she timidly asked about the cost, Tyler had already taken care of it. "It's already handled. Don't worry about it," he said so naturally, without making a spectacle of his generosity or making her feel like a debtor. That night, after putting Leo to bed, Evie reflected on everything that had happened. Tyler had acted as a concerned father would, making quick and effective decisions without hesitating to dedicate time and resources to resolve the crisis. For the first time in a long time, Evie allowed herself to imagine what it would be like to have someone like that in her life permanently. Her phone vibrated with a message from him. "How's Leo doing? Rest well and remember I'm here if you need anything." Reading those words, Evie felt a warmth in her chest she hadn't experienced in years, and knew her heart had begun to open to the possibility of love. The months following that confession brought a gradual but profound transformation in Evie's life. She discovered new reasons every day to admire the man who had arrived in her existence by mistake but stayed by choice. Sundays had become their special day. He would pick them up early in the morning and take them to places Evie had never been able to afford. The Bronx Zoo, the Children's Museum, or simply Central Park, where Leo could crawl freely on the grass while they talked about everything and nothing. During one of those Sunday afternoons, while walking through Central Park with Leo taking his first wobbly steps between them, Tyler stopped suddenly and looked at Evie with an intensity she hadn't seen before in his green eyes. "Can I tell you something I've never told anyone?" he asked with a vulnerability that completely disarmed her. Evie nodded, feeling her heart begin to beat faster without knowing why. "All my life I've had the feeling that something was missing," he confessed while watching Leo play with fallen leaves on the ground. "I built a business empire. I have more money than I could ever spend. I've traveled the entire world, but I always felt an emptiness here." He placed his hand on his chest right over his heart and continued, "Until I came to your house that early morning and saw you and Leo. That morning, I understood what had been missing my entire life: a family." The words came out of his mouth with such pure sincerity that Evie felt a lump forming in her throat because she recognized in those confessions the same feelings she had been experiencing but hadn't dared to name. "I have to confess something too," she murmured with a voice so low he had to lean closer to hear her clearly. "At first I thought you were too good to be true, that you had some hidden intention behind all your generosity." Tyler listened without interrupting, maintaining that total attention she had learned to value so much in him. "But as I got to know you," Evie continued, "I realized you're exactly what you appear to be, a good, generous man who appeared in our lives when we needed you most." Her eyes filled with tears that weren't of sadness, but of gratitude so deep she couldn't find words to express it. "And I also realized," she added with courage she didn't know she had, "that I fell in love with you without realizing it, little by little, day by day, until one day I woke up and knew I couldn't imagine my life without you in it." The moment that followed that mutual confession was one of those magical instants that remain engraved forever in the heart's memory. Tyler slowly approached Evie, giving her time to step back if she wished, but she remained motionless, looking at him with those brown eyes that shone with a love that no longer made sense to hide. "May I kiss you?" he asked with a delicacy that made her feel like the most respected and valued woman in the world. Instead of responding with words, Evie stood on tiptoes and brought her lips close to his, sealing with that kiss all the unspoken promises and shared dreams they had been building together. Leo, oblivious to the moment's transcendence but feeling his favorite adult's happiness, began to clap and laugh with that crystalline laugh only children have when they perceive pure love around them. When they finally separated, both knew they had crossed a line with no return, but they also knew it was exactly where they wanted to be. "I love you," Tyler whispered in her ear. "You and Leo, and I want to spend the rest of my life proving it to you every day." Evie felt her heart expand until it occupied her entire chest, filling her with happiness so intense that for a moment she feared it was just a dream from which she would wake. That night, after putting Leo to bed in his new crib, a gift from Tyler that had arrived that same week, along with a whole collection of educational toys, Evie sat in her small living room contemplating how her life had changed in ways she never could have imagined. The man who had entered her existence by mistake had become the answer to prayers she didn't even know she had been making. Tyler hadn't just filled her refrigerator and improved Leo's quality of life. He had filled the empty spaces in her soul with a love that was patient, generous, respectful, and true. 6 months after that life-changing marriage proposal, the small church of St. Patrick's in Lower Manhattan, filled with white flowers and the golden light of a perfect April morning. Evie walked down the center aisle on the arm of Marcus Chen, Tyler's driver who had become a father figure to her during the months of preparation, wearing a simple but elegant wedding dress that enhanced her natural beauty and the happiness radiating from every pore of her skin. Leo, dressed in a small suit that made him look like a prince in miniature, walked beside them holding a basket of rose petals he scattered on the floor with the seriousness of someone fulfilling the most important mission of his life. The guests, barely 30 people among Evie's close relatives and Tyler's dearest friends, smiled with tears in their eyes, witnessing a ceremony that had all the magic of a fairy tale come true. At the altar, Tyler waited with a smile that illuminated his entire face, dressed in a dark gray suit that made him look more handsome than ever, but above all, wearing that expression of a completely in-love man that makes women sigh and believe in true love. The ceremony was intimate and emotional, full of moments that remained engraved forever in the memory of all present. When Father Murphy asked if anyone had any objections to the marriage, Leo shouted, "No!" with such force that the entire church burst into laughter, breaking the tension and filling the atmosphere with contagious joy. The vows they exchanged were written by themselves, full of sincere promises and references to the miraculous way destiny had put their paths in the same place. "I promise to love you in days of abundance and days of scarcity," Tyler said with a firm but emotional voice. "I promise to be the best father I can be for Leo and for all the children God wants to give us. And I promise to remember every day that our love was born from a mistake that turned out to be the most beautiful success of our lives." Evie responded with a voice that broke with emotion at the end. "I promise to trust in your love, even on days when my insecurities want to make me doubt. I promise to support your dreams as you've supported mine. And I promise to teach our children that miracles exist, and sometimes they come disguised as wrong numbers." When the priest declared them husband and wife, the kiss they shared was so full of love and fulfilled promises that several guests had to search for handkerchiefs to dry their tears of happiness. The reception was held in the garden of a fifth in Brooklyn that Tyler had rented especially for the occasion, decorated with wildflowers and string lights that gave it a festive, romantic atmosphere. The food was prepared by the best traditional chef in the area, with classic American comfort food and international dishes that Evie had dreamed of having someday at a special celebration. Leo was the undisputed star of the party, dancing with all the guests and stealing the heart of every person who held him in their arms. During the couple's dance, Tyler whispered in Evie's ear, "Do you realize that less than a year ago we didn't know each other, and now I can't imagine life without you?" She responded by holding him tighter in her arms. God had this plan before we were born. We just had to find the path to get here. The afternoon passed among laughter, live music, and the contagious happiness of two people who had found in each other the half they were missing to be complete. Guests would comment for years that they had never seen a more in-love couple, or a celebration more full of genuine love. At the end of the night, when the last guests said goodbye with endless hugs and good wishes, the new Harrison family headed to their new home, a beautiful house in Westchester that Tyler had been secretly preparing for months as a wedding surprise. Leo fell asleep in his new car seat, exhausted but happy after the most exciting day of his short life. "Welcome home, Mrs. Harrison," Tyler said to Evie as he carried her in his arms to cross the threshold, a tradition that made them laugh like teenagers in love. The house was perfect, neither too ostentatious nor too simple, but exactly what a young family needs to be happy. It had a garden with swings and a treehouse where Leo could play when he was older, a spacious kitchen where Evie could prepare the family meals she loved making, and a study where Tyler could work from home to spend more time with his family. That night, as they put Leo to bed in his new room decorated with woodland animal motifs, both knew they had managed to create exactly the life they had dreamed of during all those months of dating. In the privacy of their new master bedroom, Evie and Tyler sat on the bed looking through the wedding photos the photographer had delivered that same night. "You know what excites me most about all this?" Evie asked while flipping through images that captured every special moment of the day. "What?" Tyler responded, snuggling her against his chest. "That Leo is going to grow up in a home full of love with two parents who adore each other and adore him. He'll never know what it's like to have an absent father or nights of economic worry." Tyler kissed her head tenderly and added, "And we'll never again know loneliness or the feeling that something is missing in our lives." They stayed that way for a long while in comfortable silence that was full of gratitude toward God, toward destiny, and toward that wrong number that had turned out to be the most right thing in their existence. Outside, New York City continued its tireless rhythm, but inside that house, three hearts beat in perfect harmony, creating the melody of a family born from the purest and truest love. 1 year after that perfect wedding, the Harrison home had filled with new sounds that spoke of multiplied happiness. The crystalline laughter of Leo, who at 2.5 ran through the garden chasing butterflies and speaking in that adorable mixture of clear words and babble that children his age have, and the soft cries of little Emma, barely 4 months old, who had arrived to complete the circle of love that Evie and Tyler had been building day by day. Evie, radiant with maternal happiness, held her daughter while preparing lunch in the kitchen that had become the heart of their home, singing the lullabies her grandmother had taught her when she was a child. From the window, she could see Tyler playing soccer with Leo in the garden, teaching him to kick the ball while explaining with infinite patience that he had to use his foot, not his hands. The scene filled her with gratitude so deep that sometimes she had to stop and thank God for having put in her path that extraordinary man who had not only fulfilled all his promises, but had exceeded them by far. Emma had her father's green eyes and her mother's sweet smile, but above all, she had that serenity of babies born in homes full of love and stability. From the window, Evie watched her husband lift Leo onto his shoulders, both laughing as they scored an imaginary goal. Her hand instinctively went to the small scar on her finger where she had once worried it would never heal, a reminder of the hard times, now covered by her wedding band that gleamed in the afternoon light. This beautiful story reminds us that sometimes the most unexpected mistakes can become the greatest blessings of our lives. Evie's wrong number not only changed her destiny and Leo's, but also transformed Tyler's lonely heart into a home full of true love. Did you enjoy this incredible love story that was born from a simple mistake? Share it with someone special, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more stories that will reach straight to your heart. Remember that God always has perfect plans for our lives, even when everything seems to be going wrong. Sometimes the most unexpected paths are the ones that take us exactly where we need to be. May God bless your life and your family, and may you never lose faith that miracles exist and can arrive when you least expect them. Until the next story.